Understanding the book of Romans, chapter 3. So, Romans chapter 3 emphasizes the universality of sin and the righteousness of God, highlighting that both Jews and Gentiles are under sin and can only be justified through faith in Jesus Christ alone. Point number 1, advantage of being a Jew. The chapter begins by questioning the advantage of being a Jew and the value of circumcision. Paul asserts that the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God, emphasizing their role in God's revelations. And this we find in Romans 3, verses 1 to 2. So then, what advantage then is there in being a Jew? Or what value is there in circumcision? Much in every way. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very words of God. What if some were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? Not at all. Let God be true and every human being a liar. As it is written, so that you may be proved right when you speak and prevail when you judge. But if our unrighteousness brings out God's righteousness more clearly, what shall we say? That God is unjust in bringing his wrath on us? I'm using a human argument. Certainly not. If that was so, how could God judge the world? Someone might argue, if my falsehood enhances God's truthfulness and so increases his glory, why am I still condemned as a sinner? Why not say, as some slanderers claim that we say, let us do evil that good may result? Their condemnation is just. So therefore, no one is righteous. What shall we conclude then? Do we have any advantage? Not at all. For we have already made the charge and that Jews and Gentiles alike are all under the power of sin. As it is written, there's no one righteous, not even one. There's no one who understands. There's no one who seeks God. All have turned away and have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are open graves, their tongues practice deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery mark their ways, and the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world held accountable to God. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. Righteousness through faith. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. The righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement to the shedding of his blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness. Because of his forbearance, he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did it to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time, so as to be just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. So, where then is boasting? It is excluded because of what law? The law that requires works? No, because the law that requires faith. For we maintain that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. Or is God the God of Jews only? Is he not the God of Gentiles too? Yes, of Gentiles too. Since there is only one God, who will justify the circumcised by faith and the uncircumcised to that same faith? Do we then nullify the law by this faith? Not at all. Rather, we uphold the law. Point number 2, the faithfulness of God. Paul addresses the issue of human unfaithfulness and reassures that it does not nullify God's faithfulness. He emphasizes that God remains true, even if every human is a liar. And we see this in Romans 3, verses 3 to 4. Point number 3, universal sinfulness. The chapter underscores that all people, both Jews and Gentiles, are under the power of sin. Paul quotes several Old Testament scriptures to illustrate that there is no one righteous, not even one. We find this in Romans 3, verses 9 to 12. Point number 4, justification by faith. A significant theme in this chapter is that no one will be declared righteous by the works of the law. Instead, righteousness comes through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. We find this in Romans 3, verses 20 to 22. Point number 5, God's righteousness. Paul explains that God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement, demonstrating his righteousness and justifying those who have faith in Jesus. We find this in Romans 3, verses 25 to 26. Point number 6, exclusion of boasting. The chapter concludes by stating that boasting is excluded because justification is based on faith, not works. Paul emphasizes that God justifies both Jews and Gentiles through faith, and we find this in Romans 3, verses 27 to 30. So, Romans chapter 3 is a profound declaration of the Christian doctrine of justification by faith, emphasizing all humanity is sinful and in need of God's grace. It reassures believers that faith in Jesus Christ is a means by which they are justified before God, regardless of their background or adherence to the law. This chapter sets a foundation for understanding the grace and righteousness of God in the context of salvation. So that is Romans chapter 3. Please subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Have a blessed day. Cheers.